off with George, actually, because you said you're the least qualified, so we're going to force you to talk more. But you are the only one on the panel who was actually on the main stage at TM London this weekend. And I'm interested to know how you use the internet in order to further your message, because you're also the only one here who I think would brand himself as an artist. So I'd be interested to...
Sorry. Yes, I am the only one who is an artist. Reminds me of the prom.
So yeah, you have a wonderful podcast called Geologic.
Yeah, well, for me, my approach towards skepticism and proselytizing skepticism and rational thought has always been the approach of using a wedge. And
did you steal that from the creationists?
Yeah, right, sort of. They stole it from me, actually.
The microphone doesn't like us. I don't know.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Is it all right? Cool. It's the idea of entertaining people and providing some kind of a little issue that can sneak into their brains, maybe, and make them second guess or question a belief or something that they might have within them. My podcast isn't directly labeled as a sort of skeptical podcast. It's 45 minutes of silliness with a little bit of, atheism, skepticism, rational thinking thrown in, and it colors everything. Like pretty much everyone in this room, I'm sure, your skepticism, your rationality affects everything you do to some degree. For me, it affects the show, and what's nice is that, how to put this? Well, my favorite film of all time is Life of Brian, because it's the best commentary on religion without being let me tell you why religion stinks. It's religious thought or following, being one of the flock is not the best way to go, because as soon as you start teaching in an entertaining setting, the entertainment value pretty much disappears. Teaching is its own kind of thing. What I've managed to do is build a bit of an audience through, I don't want to say fooling people, but I receive emails all the time that someone, I thought your show was about geology, so I started listening. There's no geology here. But that one thing you said about, that one religious moron, that was a really good point. I've never thought of that before. Or someone who's a fan of my music would write in and say, hey, I liked, such and such a song, the guitar solo on that song. And then, I didn't realize that homeopathy works that way. Really? Is that how it works? And I'll be like, well, yeah, you should go to this site and this site. And that's how you get it in. That's been my approach, which has sort of been the way I've done it.
Yeah, I think you're probably unique on this panel in that respect as well. Does anyone else use sneaky skepticism online?
No, but I point out that I think that's the big thing that makes film.
It's crazy out here, guys.
Enacted Life of Brian.
We're gonna have this place burned down.
I think that's the thing that makes Phil Blake's blog very successful, because you can just be into astronomy and read his blog, and there's plenty for you. But he slips those skeptical things in there in all the articles, and sometimes has articles. A lot of articles are just skepticism. A lot of articles are just astronomy. But it helps, reach a different audience.
Well, Neil, so you do Little Atoms, and it's actually out on the radio. So I can imagine more people just flipping to the dial might find you. Do you feel like you attract an audience of non-skeptics who are just interested in particular guests and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable, and I think we obviously position ourselves as a skeptical program, but because one of our sort of the ethos behind the show is that basically nobody's interested in me, they're interested in the person that we're getting on the show. So although we choose the guests, and we only choose the guests of people that we're interested in, we obviously, we're only going to have skeptical guests on. So we are sort of positioning ourselves very much as a skeptical show, but it all depends on what the person that we have on is coming on to talk about. So there's plenty of shows you can listen on our program, our podcast, where we're not talking about explicitly skeptical or rational or subjects. So yeah, you could probably, I mean, no doubt we could probably reel in people who believe in conspiracy theories or something if they see that we're interviewing people who have written books about conspiracy theories. And, you know, well, actually about it, they would just never listen again.
Never mind.
But I'm sure it does work like that.
Yeah, I was at Dragon Con a while back, and I was on a panel. There's an entire track of apocalypse stuff. It's just the apocalyptic track. They literally have, you know, these talks on pretty much any subject you could want. And I think a lot of people showed up who were very disappointed when I was like, yeah, no, 2012, the world's probably not going to end. Aw. But I also got a bunch of people who came up and said, so what's this skepticism thing? And they ended up coming over to the Skepchick track. So I think there's something to be said about being sneaky.
There's nothing wrong with specializing, though. I mean, I think it's doing what you're good at and specializing in a particular topic. If you're a good interviewer and you want to interview skeptical people, or whatever it is, my particular skill set was, you know, ripping off Monty Python was my skill set. So that's kind of what I do. Which is a nice thing for anybody out there, that no matter what you do, you can be a part of the movement, and whatever that thing is that you do. You don't have to podcast, you don't have to perform, you don't have to write. If you install tub grout, there is probably some portion of your job that you could make more skeptical, you know, in terms of which tub grout's going to work best, or to stay away from the homeopathic, you know, tub grout, whatever.
I don't think they have tub grout in England.
Oh, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay. Bath grout? Is that better?
Also, I'd like to point out that before we came up on stage, my friend Dave pointed out that this is the 40th anniversary of Monty Python. And I dislike him, so I said that I was going to specifically not say anything about Monty Python on this panel.
Oh, sorry.
So, you just sat down and you're like, Monty Python.
That's all three people are gathered together.
That 2 3 nerds.
Initial form.
How about you guys? Your blogs are very, I mean, Skepchick and Skeptic's Guide, I mean, it's right there in the title. So I think sometimes it's tough for us to attract people who aren't already considering themselves skeptics because of that. What do you think with something like Quackometer, like science?
Sorry, about attracting people. I deliberately, one of the tricks I do, and you know, probably Tim could say that, is when I write a blog post, I deliberately choose the titles to attract people who aren't interested in what I'm writing about. Because I know that I've got a certain number of people who are going to read me, so I don't really care about how they do that. Okay, bless you all. I feel like a preacher up here. So yeah, I target it very carefully so it comes up in Google. And because of the fact that a few people have tried to sue me and my Google juice is now pretty strong, I can write about a company on the first page. So the most amazing thing is the page that gets the most hits on my site is for people exploring the joys of sticking burning candles in your ear. Sorry, this is a bit of an anecdote now, but they all come along and then get really upset that I pointed out that ear candling is only 20 years old and the Hopi Indians didn't invent it, because the Hopi Indians had written to the company called Biosun and said, stop using our name, we've got nothing to do with it. And yet people get really upset somehow that they still want to carry on.
Yeah, so I think basically the internet's full of shit, and our sort of job as skeptics is to try and dilute some of that to an extent, so that, as you say, I think Google's very important, and the aim, I think, a lot of the time is to try and sort of get good information on the first page of search results for Google. So if somebody looks up, you know, the General Chiropractic Council and, you know, thinks that they're some sort of reputable regulatory body, then we can very quickly educate them and tell them they're a bunch of twats. And I think that's the sort of power of having a lot of different kind of grassroots bloggers linking to each other and getting the sort of Google juice flowing, as it were.
I'd like to thank you for throwing the word twat in, because we just want to keep up with this weekend's talks, and where there was a fuck in every talk. So. Now there was in this one as well.